Here we are, Clint, 2 days after the big UFC 270 event. Heavyweight title was on the line there. We had Francis Ngannou decision his way to a victory over Cyril Gane. I didn't think I'd ever have those words coming out of my mouth, but Francis Ngannou, that wrestling that he showed in that fight with Stipe Miocic came in handy this past weekend against Cyril Gane. Obviously, we'll talk a little bit more about the nitty gritty a little bit later, but one of the big fallouts here for this matchup, this is one thing that we've kind of been waiting on, is whether Francis Ngannou was going to win or lose this match and how it will kind of affect his negotiations with the UFC moving forward. So, in terms of his contract, he's automatically binded into another 3 fights because you won this title fight. This is how the UFC always kind of holds on to their champions, by always extending their contract after a title fight, especially if they win it. Now, Francis Ngannou is going to be tied in that web that the UFC likes to kind of weave together with their contracts. So I'm interested in seeing how that pans out. But the big tell here is Mr. Dana White being nowhere to be found after the fight had wrapped up. They go in there and get Mick Maynard, matchmaker, to put the belt on Francis Ngannou. And Dana even skirts the press conference as well. Doesn't even go out there to kind of talk about the night and the ramifications of the heavyweight result. What are your thoughts on that, man? Like like Dana White knows the whole storyline going into this week was this is Francis's last fight on his contract. If he loses, if he wins, they're right back in business with him. And he skirts everything and doesn't even bother offering his opinion on how things went by just, again, disappearing, not even going to the press conference, disappearing after the fight was completed. What kind of precedent do you think that sets for the media, for the fans, for everybody that's trying to figure out what's next for Francis Ngannou?
Man, Locke, this is a perfect time to use our daily Doofus Award. And in fact, we talked about last time how we originally wanted to call this segment the Asshole of the Week. I got to tell you, buddy, for this circumstance, Asshole of the Week is a much more appropriate term for this award, because Dana White pulled one of the shittiest moves we have ever seen by dipping out of that thing, refusing to wrap the belt around Francis Ngannou's waist after that incredible, amazing performance. The UFC stacked the deck, Lock. We know they wanted nothing to do with Francis Ngannou moving forward. We know they absolutely wanted Gane to replace him as the UFC champion. They put him in a corner, and in fact, Francis Ngannou blew his freaking knee out 3 weeks before the fight and knew that if he pulled from this fight, if he pulled out of this, he would get buried by the UFC. They would have grounds to strip him of that heavyweight title. So he went in there, he fought injured. Not only did he fight injured, but he put on a clinic, maybe the best performance we have ever seen from Francis Ngannou, beat his opponent not by first round thunderous knockout like most of us assumed he would, but by 5-round decision. This man leveled up. This man overcame all adversity, deserves to be the UFC heavyweight champion, and deserved his damn moment. Dana White, you are my doofus of the week for not showing up. And then the cowardice to not even go in front of the media afterwards to answer the questions. Man, we all know. We all know. The writing is on the wall, and Dana White wussed out. That's all this came down to.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with that take, man. It's a bummer to see him kind of tuck tail and get out of that arena or wherever the hell he went afterwards. It seems as though that he wants to kind of take the approach that I'm going to reach out to a certain media member, whether it be Brett Okamoto, whether it be Kevin Iole, one of those guys that are willing to kind of give Dana White the time of day and kind of spin it in a positive manner. Maybe that's what he's kind of looked to do here regarding this Francis Ngannou contract negotiation and all that crap. A couple of things that were thrown out, even by Francis himself. I was surprised, honestly, that Joe Rogan posed him the question. Tyson Fury has been calling him out. The fact that he even asked him that in the cage after the fight was kind of mind-blowing to me. I would assume that all of his producers and everybody would have been like, hey, let's not talk about any boxing. Let's just
I'm sure they
talk
were
about the fight and
screaming
make
in
it pretty.
his ear, Lock. I am sure
Exactly.
that earpiece was blowing up, but
What are
that's
you
the one
doing,
thing we love
Joe?
about Joe Rogan, right? He don't give a fuck.
Exactly. So it was interesting that he brought that up, and obviously Ngannou entertained it a little bit, and that kind of seems to be what he's leaning into, even post fight on the social medias and all that. So, personally, we'll quickly touch on Tyson Fury and Ngannou here, so that, and then we can move it forward to something else that occurred in the fight. But I have no interest in seeing the fight, first and foremost, because I've already tweeted out something saying how, we've already seen this fight before, right? We have the poor man's Deontay Wilder going in there against the guy in Tyson Fury. We've seen the fight happen before. The finesse, the discipline of Tyson Fury ultimately overcomes the power that's going to be coming back his way. Now you're going to put Francis Ngannou, who, still developing his boxing mechanics, not saying he's a fleshed out product yet, or he's garbage in boxing, but you're talking about doing that for possibly 12 rounds, 3 minutes at a time against the best heavyweight boxer in the world. Doesn't really bode well, in my opinion. The only thing two things I think that could come of a positive out of this for Francis Ngannou if this fight does go down. One, he's going to walk away with a pretty fat check, right? Let's be honest. He'll probably walk away between $5 and $8 million, $10 million, depending on how the pay-per-view does. But even if he loses, there's a slight possibility that he could still get that Tyson Fury rub, which is obviously way more than what the UFC and Francis Ngannou is currently getting. Tyson Fury has got to be a much bigger name than what Francis brings to the table. So maybe he gets that Tyson Fury rub, and that plays into his next pay-per-view buys, right? Maybe he gets that trickle-down effect of, I was in the cage or in the ring with the best heavyweight boxer in the world. People have seen me now. They know who I am. If I get a knockdown in that fight, that even works better. But the fact that he even steps into there, the publicity and everything that's going to surround that fight, hopefully that trickles down to him coming back to the UFC and shows in the pay-per-view buys as well. What's your take on that? And then ultimately, what do you take of this whole Tyson Fury thing?
Yeah, I'm kind of with you here, Locke. I don't need to see that fight. I mean, we all talked about how Cyril Gane was going to be a problem as far as his overwhelming volume, his accuracy, his speed advantage. We all talked about how that was going to be an issue. Tyson Fury is even a better boxer than someone like Cyril Gane. Obviously, we're talking MMA versus boxing. This is the best heavyweight boxer on the planet right now. His speed, his athleticism, his pace, his accuracy. That would be such a one-sided fight that it wouldn't even be funny. And I mean, as always, we know Francis Ngannou has the nuclear option. We talked about that with the Gane fight. Maybe he cracks him with a big one early. That's his only shot. He's still just got that puncher's chance against a guy like Fury. So I don't need to see it. But what I will tell you, Locke, is that I actually think Tyson Fury needs Francis Ngannou because boxing is drowning. Their biggest star right now is a YouTuber who's beating up retired MMA fighters. Like, the heavyweight picture in boxing captured the world just last year. They had a couple of really solid fights that everybody was interested in. It's a dead landscape now. What's next? Who's up? Like, there's no one for these guys to fight. There's no one to make this exciting. And what are they going to do? Run it back a fifth or a sixth time, Fury and Wilder? No one's going to want to watch that. So I think that this is a golden opportunity for Francis Ngannou to cash a giant check, which he is well deserving of. And then I also think that boxing actually kind of needs a little bit of Ngannou. They need another Conor McGregor injection of stardom and fandom, a new face on the scene. And even if they do dominate, even if he would come out here and just kind of box up Francis Ngannou for, another decision victory or something like that, and it's unimpressive and disappointing the way all these MMA versus boxing fights end up being, it doesn't matter. At the end of the day, it would move the needle for boxing and it would help them out in a big way. I'm all for fighter pay. I'm all for Francis Ngannou getting paid. So I'll support it. If they sync it up, I'm going to watch it. I'm not going to sit here and tell you that I won't watch it because I'm a degenerate. I will, and I'll probably bet on it too. But at the end of the day, I do think it's kind of an unnecessary exercise for us as the fans.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. And again, it holds up the heavyweight title a little bit longer as well, right? That's something that's kind of been the bane of that division over the last several years, whereas DC and Stipe were going back and forth for however long, and now finally Francis has a strap and undisputed. I just think it just prolongs things a little bit more. So yeah,
and what
either
about the
way,
knee injury? I mean, if he wants to box next, he's got to come back from his knee being torn to hell, and then he's going to go box, recover from that, and then potentially we get another title shot. Bro, we're going to get another interim champion before all that takes place.
Dude, you're right. You're right. I would be surprised if we see Francis Ngannou inside the cage before 2023, especially if he wants to take this boxing thing. Again, you need time to heal up that knee as well. All right. Another very interesting thing that obviously occurred in this fight, we're going to dig into it a little bit here. It seemed like it was 2-2 going into that fifth round, at least on my scorecard, on a lot of people's scorecards as well. That was 2-2 going into the fifth round. Even on the judges' scorecards, actually, one judge actually scored that first round for Francis Ngannou, which I don't really understand at all. Regardless, it still would have been 2-2 going into that fifth round. We see Ciryl Gane managed to get that top position against Francis Ngannou. And then this is where kind of the debate starts to happen was he clearly makes a move, but it's the debate has been whether he was attempting to commit to a leg lock or whether he was trying to commit to a guard pass. There is no question, without a doubt, that there was a sweep involved. There was absolutely a sweep. That's why Francis Ngannou ended up on top. I posed this question to my Twitter followers before we went on live here, and we got 422 votes, too shy of my favorite number in the world. We got 56.4% of people that believed he was committing to a leg lock, 43.6% of people believing that he was attempting to a pass. I'll quickly just give you what I thought. The main thing that this comes down to is Ciryl Gane lifting up his left knee, his left leg, and what the intention and the purpose behind that was. To me, as somebody who has not stepped on BJJ mats, but has been watching this fight or this fight game for as long as I have, 10, 12, 13 years at this point, if he was looking to pass the guard, I don't think we would have seen as much space between his knee and the thigh of Francis Ngannou. I think you would be slicing through that top calf and trying to secure that half guard if that's what he's trying to do. To me, what it looked like, and I believe freeze framing everything does a disservice because we need to see what direction Gane's leg was headed in. With a freeze frame, it's very subjective in terms of, okay, this is what you think he was doing. This is what what other people think he was doing. To me, it looked like that left leg was moving towards his other leg, putting him a little bit off balance, but with the intention of locking up that leg lock and falling backwards and trying to get to it. Again, the sweep was there 100%. But I believe that was the intention behind it. That's what Josh Barnett thinks. That's what a couple other high-level guys have thought. I tried posing the question to some BJJ guys I follow on Instagram. None of them have gotten back to me as of this point. Shout out to my guy, Brandon Olivas, who actually did. He does that podcast with fucking Santino DeFranco from Fight Ready, and he also believes that he was going for a leg lock in that position. You took your time out to break it down as best as possible. I want you to kind of let us know as well. What do you think the intention was behind Ciryl Gane lifting that leg, and where do you think he was headed with it?
Lock, my fingers hurt. I have been arguing on Twitter about this exact thing for literal hours. I was up until like midnight last night with people arguing online about this and the differences in the position. These bad boys are tired. So in my opinion, I believe that Ciryl Gane was attempting to go for that sweep. As you mentioned, we all think it was 2-2 going into the championship rounds. Now, if you have the biggest human being on the planet on their back in a controlled position, why you falling back for a leg lock? Like, you're gonna let that man on top of you after he has smothered you for about 15 minutes when you could just grind him out for the final 3 minutes of the fight if you simply sit on top of him there? I think that was a disastrous choice by Gane, if it so happened that he did go for that leg lock there, because realistically, the fight was in the bag if he doesn't make that move.
I agree.
Which is one thing that I believe lends itself towards him going for a pass in that position, because Ciryl Gane is a very cerebral fighter. Now, I've gone back and forth time and time again with people on this, and I realize I may have gone a little bit too hard on this, Lock. The thing that really got me fired up initially is that a lot of people were saying that this is a mistake that Ciryl Gane made and refusing to give credit for Francis Ngannou. Because if Ciryl Gane rolled for a leg lock onto his back, then Francis didn't really sweep him. Francis didn't really time it and get on top of him and make the right move. And that was really what I was taking offense to, was the fact that people were discrediting Francis Ngannou for a beautiful scissor sweep. Now, it may be a BJJ level 1 move. You learn the scissor sweep is your very first sweep in class, so it might be super low level, But who expected that to come from Francis Ngannou? For him to do it, think of doing it, and hit it perfectly in a title fight in the 5th round when the fight is on the line. Give my man his credit. He deserves the credit, whether or not Gane was hunting the leg lock or passing. I do personally believe that he was passing. Right before he makes the move to squat up onto his feet, Francis Ngannou actually opens his guard and lays his right leg flat on the mat lock, which is a bait that I believe Cyril Gane took to start his pass. Francis Ngannou originally had the position sealed up, closed guard. You can see him very clearly roll that thigh over and open up that side, which Cyril Gane, I think, went for. And I think that's how the whole sweep took place. Now, I've done jiu-jitsu for a lot of years. I'm only a blue belt, but I've got a decent, solid amount of training. I've got some competition experience. There are a couple of different attacks and a couple of different positions that you can flow to from that squatting standing position that Cyril Gane was in. And Locke, I'm not even kidding. I might need to do like a breakdown video or something of this shit, because a lot of people are thinking that it's clear as day that he was rolling for a leg lock. And I can tell you that if he was rolling for a leg lock, he had not set it up properly. He did not have control of his opponent. That would have been the worst, lowest IQ Hail Mary leg lock that he was rolling for of all time. And maybe that's true. Maybe he was doing that. But there are other options that are far safer, like keeping himself in top position to grind out Francis Ngannou, which I personally think are a little bit more realistic given the circumstances, and Francis deserves the credit for the nice timing on the sweep.
I absolutely agree with giving Francis his due and his credit, because if it wasn't for also him going for that sweep, the scissor sweep that you had said, who knows if he actually would have ended up on top, or if Gane would have kind of been in a better position to start cranking on that leg lock. But absolutely, Francis went for that sweep. That's what his intention was, and I think that's why he was able to follow through with it and end up on top. For me, in terms of kind of claiming my stance and saying that Gane was going for a leg lock, it was not at all to discredit the maneuver that Francis Ngannou was attempting to do there with the scissor sweep. That is clear as day that he hit that sweep, but I believe the commitment to the leg lock, which is why you see Cyril Gane lift up his leg, is the reasoning as to why. The only way we can figure this out for sure, though, is from the horse's mouth, right? We need Cyril Gane to talk about this. Exactly.
I DM'd Cyril Gane. I asked him. Hopefully we get a response. I will apologize publicly if he responds and lets me know he was going for the leg lock, but I am asking for the people.
I did also do this. Shout out to my guy Connor Burks on the MMA Hour. He does their GC and Helwani Bets segment over there. I did ask him, I'm like, hey, I know you guys are having Eric Nixick on. Show them the clip. What do they think? He goes, I'll pitch it to the guys. It is the hottest topic on MMA Twitter right now, so they might go with it. So we'll see what Eric Nixick thinks as well, if they're able to ask him that question. But the main thing here, in my opinion, I think Cyril Gane fucked himself regardless. He could have kept his knee on the ground, could have stayed in top position and rode out the rest of that round, just pitter-pattering Francis Ngannou from on top. But I think he's definitely been successful with that leg lock attempt in prior matches, even in fights where he was up. Maybe that's why he expected to go for that and thinking it would pay off. And I also, last thing on this, and then we'll move on. Excuse me. I want to shout out my guy Black Belt DT on Twitter. Another point that he kind of brought up: big guys, they don't normally train as much for leg locks, considering their strength and their ability to injure their opponents or their training partners easily by going for leg locks. And not to mention, they don't normally have other big bodies to train with to be able to train those types of positions. So yeah, there could be a lack of fight IQ or jiu-jitsu IQ from the Gane side, not being able to practice it correctly and be able to pull it off. Sure, you can submit Dontel Mays with it, but you're fighting at the top of the top here against a guy in Francis Ngannou who is showing, especially in that fight, that he's really rounding out his game from the stand-up to the grappling to the jiu-jitsu. All credit to Francis Ngannou for pulling it off and winning a fight by decision. Again, not like we expected. All right, let's keep this train moving along here, Clint, because there was another title fight on the night. We had Davison Figueiredo recapture his title over Brandon Moreno via a decision here. Now let's talk about the decision at first. I'm going to post some information here. Shout out to the guys over at MMA Decisions. I'll run through this and then I hand it on over to you to get your thoughts on the decision. 17-8 media scores in favor of Davison Figueiredo winning that fight. Rounds 1 and 3 were easily for Figueiredo. Round 2, easily for Brandon Moreno. All three judges got those scorecards absolutely correct. Now, rounds 4 and 5 is where things start to get a little bit shaky. Now, I'm going to be including fan scoring here, and that's based on 570 scorecards submitted when I pulled this information. Round 4, 66% of fans had for Moreno. Only one judge gave it to Moreno, though. Round 5, 60% of fans scored it for Figueiredo. Only one judge gave him round 5. Personally, my scorecard, slightly biased, obviously, with the play on Davison Figueiredo. I thought he had rounds 1, 3, 4, and 5. I'm trying to recall which round it was. I believe it was round 3 where he landed the significant strikes near the ending of that round, right?
Yes.
That was where Moreno, in my opinion, was slightly controlling that round. Like, he was just a notch above Figueiredo up until that knockdown. And in my opinion, that knockdown hurting him and wobbling him was the most significant moment of the round and was enough to push him ahead of Brandon Moreno in that round, which is why he deserved that. Rounds 4 and 5, very close. We saw at the ending of round 5, both guys having tremendous success in terms of hurting each other. It really went back and forth, but I thought that Figueiredo did enough in that round 5, even prior to those exchanges, for him to pull ahead and get that judge's decision. I had a 49-46 for Figueiredo. I absolutely understand a 48-46 Figueiredo, but I don't think that this was as controversial as I'm seeing it a little bit on the timeline here. I'm seeing people with the Moreno scorecards. How did you have it scored? And what do you think of the robbery or possible robbery title that people want to put on this?
Definitely not a robbery, lock. This is one where it was a close decision, and I think it could have potentially gone either way. I am big in the Brandon Moreno camp myself, and I had it 3-2 for Figueiredo. The problem for me here, I think, is the way the rules of MMA work, the way the scoring goes, especially because it being boxing based. Those knockdowns, I feel like, hold so much weight in MMA, and that, for me personally, is a problem. I really think that Brandon Moreno was winning basically every round until he got knocked down. And the knockdown simply erases the 99% good work that Brandon Moreno was doing up until that point in the eyes of most judges. So anytime Brandon Moreno was winning a round, especially a close round like the 5th one, for example, and then he gets clipped and dropped down to a knee, he was fine. He got back up. He continued fighting. He was never rolling his eyes. He was never almost out or unconscious. But that one knockdown is just enough to sway it into the favor of Davison Figueiredo. This was a highly competitive fight, Locke. I think that this was it was a fantastic title fight. Both guys fought very well. Both guys executed extremely well. Let's not forget that Brandon Moreno hurt Davison Figueiredo several times throughout this fight as well. He just didn't go to a knee. He just didn't go down, because if Brandon Moreno had knocked Figueiredo down once, he probably gets his hand raised and gets that belt wrapped around his waist. But instead, Brandon Moreno was the one taking the knee, and because of that, the decision did not go his way. I don't think it's wrong to score it 3-2 Moreno. I don't think it's wrong to score it 3-2 for Figueiredo. I had it 3-2 for Figueiredo myself. 4-1 Figueiredo, you can make an argument for it. I don't think that's the correct scorecard, but I can at least get there. Close competitive fight. I'm glad we're going to see round 4. Hopefully, should they not end up doing another immediate rematch and they take a break, then my guy Askar Askarov, I have no issue cheering for, because if Figueiredo is the one holding the belt at that point, then I get to root my ass off for Askar Askarov without any emotional attachment.
Exactly. Before touching on what you had just pointed out, because I absolutely agree with what you just said there, I feel like there needs to be a shout out to our guy Eddie Cha, who's obviously a very important part of Figueiredo's training camp there, but unfortunately at the last minute did not get to get that seat in the corner with Figueiredo there. But one of the things that he told me going into this fight was we are going to try to focus on leg kicks nice and early here and try to slow down the tempo as best as possible. And I think Figueiredo, a guy that you wouldn't assume sticks to a game plan, stuck to that game plan pretty well in his own right, man. I think that he did attack the calf nice and early there, and it did have an impact on the fight, and that allowed Figueiredo to get the rest of his game going, which is obviously his big shots and the power that he brings in his hands. And also, hats off to Figueiredo with the cardio, the weight cut, all that stuff, absolutely on point. Even to the point in round 5 where Moreno lands a beautiful takedown, Figueiredo does not settle, gets right back to his feet and gets back to his game plan. Not a lot of people believed he had that in him,
especially I thought it was
if the
over.
Fight, yeah, especially if the fight gets into that 5th round. Trust me, I was holding on to my takedown. I'm like, we might still have this 3-2, but this is not a good look for him to be on his back in this position. Shout out to that. But yeah, talking about what you just ended off on, who's next for Figueiredo, right? I don't think many people would be super upset if we got the immediate rematch, considering how fun a lot of these fights have been. But I think you're right on the head there, man. Askarov versus Kai Kara-France. That's got to be number 1 contender. Let's let Figueiredo just chill out for a while. That was a war that he was in. And he, like you said, he didn't get knocked down, but he got wobbled a bunch in that fight. I'm sure he took tremendous damage in that. Let him chill out. I think he just had a baby as well. Let him go chill with his baby, chill with his family. Let Askarov and KKF battle it out. I think that one's scheduled for the end of March. And then at the end of the summer, let's get the flyweight strap on the line once again for the winner of that fight. Pantoja is the other name that I've heard thrown out there. We've already seen Figueiredo 30-27 him pretty much. We don't need to see that fight immediately. Askarov, Kai Kara-France, those are who should be next. Moreno maybe fights Pantoja one more time, right? If most people remember, Pantoja choked him out on the Ultimate Fighter way back in the day. So that would be a great that would be the great redemption story for Moreno. Once again, beat the guy that beat you on the Ultimate Fighter, and then earn yourself another title shot. And maybe we get the 4th fight early 2023 or end of 2022. What's your favorite one out of that? I think you said the Askarov one, right?
It's a really tough debate, Locke, because the division is maybe one of the most exciting in the sport today. Can you believe Dana White at one point cut these men? I love this division. It's on fire right now. And we can have the strike while the iron is hot argument. The fan base is split. A lot of people think this was a robbery. This was a very close fight. The title just changed hands again. If you want to do the 4th fight between Figueiredo and Moreno right now, sign me the hell up. I will buy that pay-per-view. I want to see these guys continue fighting each other because it is always so exciting. And honestly, it seems like a clear 1A, 1B type of situation where these are the two that are just going to continue fighting for that strap on repeat if we let them. Now, I am interested in seeing Askarov and Kai Kara-France as a number 1 contender spot. I completely agree with the fact whoever wins that fight is deserving of the next shot. The problem with Pantoja is he ends up in no man's land. We do not want to see him fight Figueiredo again. We've been there. We've done that. There's really no need for us to watch it again. If there's no other options, they're both fun and exciting fighters. Obviously, Pantoja wants that shot back. I will watch him. Let's give him the shot. Go ahead. But we've got too many other good, juicy options right now. So if you're not going to immediately book this rematch, if these guys want to settle, if they want to take a little time off, if Askar makes a either, I don't want to sell Kai Kara-France short. If either of Kai Kara-France or Askarov makes just an awesome case for themselves in that next fight, then sure, go ahead, give them the shot. And then I think Brandon Moreno versus Pantoja for the next title eliminator is probably the right move to make. I love all of these fights, Locke. I want to watch every single one of them. But I do think that if they just want to throw these two guys right back in the cage again because of the recency of it, because of the passion of the fans, because of everyone saying that Moreno never should have lost that decision, because of that picture where when you zoom in, you can see Joe Rogan in the corner going, when they call off the judges' scorecards, there's definitely some swell here. There's definitely some momentum and hype behind this fight. Maybe take advantage of that and just go ahead and book the 4th fight right away.
I love it. Again, either option I'm down with because all these fights are going to be fun as hell. All right, Clint, let's talk about one last thing and then we'll wrap this thing up. We'll talk about who stood out to you most outside of the co-main event and main event. Who stood out to you most on this card? I'll kick it off to give you a minute to kind of rack your brain. But you got to give some shout outs to Victor Henry coming in as a 4-1 underdog and absolutely piecing up Raoni Barcelos that night. Obviously, I was pretty big on Barcelos in that spot. I really thought that he was going to go out there and put an ass whooping on Victor Henry. I expected if Henry was to have any success in that fight, it would come in the grappling realm. He would be able to get his crafty jiu-jitsu going or something like that. But he goes out there and absolutely pieces up Hani Barcelos on the feet, busts him up in that second round, and takes all 3 rounds unanimously on the judges' scorecards. Talk about a debut. All week, I was saying, talk about a debut and being thrown right to the sharks right away. Victor Henry was ready for that shit. He's been in the game for years and years. It was awesome seeing Josh Barnett in his corner as well. But seeing him go out there and do what he did to Hani Barcelos, immediate star of the card for me outside of the main and co-main event. What other spots on the card kind of stuck out to you the most?
Man, this was such a fun card, man. I tried to sell people on this early on that it was a little bit low level. It was a little lacking in name value, but the excitement factor was absolutely there on every single one of these fights. It was an awesome card, so I don't want to cut anybody short. But Locke, I'll be honest, if there's anybody that really jumped off the page at me as far as exciting, I gotta go with Vanessa Demopoulos. The way that she ate that punch, goes completely out, wakes up after being unconscious on the mat, manages to survive, and then snaps off an armbar for a come from behind victory. That was such a fun way to get this card started. The sheer tenacity that she showed to hang into that fight, and then just the spectacular, I'm a ground game guy, I love me some jiu-jitsu, the spectacular armbar, the way she stayed in it. If she had just taken 1 or 2 more bad shots, she's TKO lost round 1. Instead, she's getting a performance bonus and getting carried off into the sunset by Joe freaking Rogan. Like, I already put this tweet out that last year I swore that if I won money betting MMA in 2021, that I would shake my ass like Valerie from Bellator. And I did, and I did. And everybody, by the way, is welcome. Check out my TikTok. You'll enjoy it. Show the wife. What I'm going to do this year is I'm going to do my damnedest to pull off a splits like Vanessa Demopoulos. So that's what's on the table for 2022. If I close out this year as a profitable sports bettor in mixed martial arts, my ass is doing the splits, or at least I'm going to give it my best old college try. So I got to shout out Vanessa Demopoulos for an awesome, awesome fight. Sweet comeback, sweet armbar. That was a hell of an exciting fight for as long as it lasted, and I loved every second of it.
It looks like Clint is going to be wheelchairing himself into 2023 with a pulled groin, pulled hammy, pulled everything in that midsection area. But we're here for it, Clint. We're here for it. We would love to see that regardless, win or lose on the year. We need to see that
stretching
on the timelines. I do want to obviously give a shout out to Eddie Chaw, Brandon Olivas, and Santiago DeFranco, who were in the corner of Vanessa Demopoulos. So even though Eddie didn't get his shine in the Figueiredo corner, at least he got some shine in that Demopoulos corner, being able to watch her secure that victory. All right, Clint, that is a damn good recap of UFC 270. Obviously, a bunch of other great fights. The fact that Frevola and Valdez didn't get any type of fight of the night honors, again, fight of the night obviously got to be the co-main event, but that fight was an absolute barn burner. From the jump, Frevola ends up getting his hand raised there. Hopefully, they got some backstage bonus money that's not being shown to the rest
Della
of the
deserves
some yes, credit, man. Beautiful performance from Della Maddalena. I can't wait to see him back in the cage either. And again, it would be great if they actually matched him up against his original opponent, Warlley Alves, because it seems like he could hang there and possibly pull off a victory of his own. All right, Clint. Appreciate you doing this. Obviously, I'm always going to appreciate you for some reason in the middle of the day, even though this is our thing. But do want to remind everybody that's been watching, make sure you subscribe to this channel. This is going to be the permanent home of the Deadlock podcast come March. We're only doing the quick hits on here for now. Everything else will be on my channel until March. So please don't miss the move when we come on over to the permanent home here on the Deadlock podcast. Make sure you guys follow here. Link is in the description below for the social medias as well. Let's get that number up to 500. We're roughly around the lower 400s now. 500 is the next benchmark. And yeah, appreciate everybody joining us on this Monday afternoon. We got 1 week off from the UFC, but we're back at it next week for the Strickland versus Hermansson card. But if there's any other big news that me and Clint need to talk about this week, this is exactly where you're going to be able to find us. All right. Appreciate everybody joining us, and we'll see you guys next time. Peace out.